Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Eaton, and as always, I bring the coolest guests to you. And if you've ever wanted to know how to regulate your nervous system or just ways that regulating your nervous system can positively impact your life and your relationships and your career and success, I have the perfect guest for you today. I'm sitting down with Holly Joy McCabe. She's a licensed somatic trauma therapist trained in a bunch of different neuroscience and psychology-based modalities for mental and physical health, performance, and success. She's got 20 years of experience in the mind-body health space, and she even pioneered the Satori Method, a cutting-edge healing and transformation process for high-level humans. I'm so excited to have you today, Holly, truly.
Me too. Like super, super excited.
How do you end up getting into nervous system regulation?
Huh. In a nutshell, like most of us, my own catastrophe, my own chronic illness, my own mental health struggles. My early career, I was really obsessed with fitness, like exercise, fitness, diet. And I went really deep into the nutritional realm for many years, thinking like, this is the missing piece. This is so much more than exercise. And then after I did that, I had the privilege of enrolling in, it was actually a massage school, but it was very Eastern based. And I got introduced to a whole other world of energy medicine and meridians and somatics of how our body holds trauma and our nervous system. And then I was like, this is the missing piece. This is everything. None of the fitness or nutrition stuff matters, or even the mindset stuff matters if we don't have this bigger foundation. And so I really have been an integrator of various modalities and stuff. I think that's kind of a trait of mine that is interwoven into all the levels of my career. Is I'm not a this or that, I'm a all the things, and kind of integrating everything together. But I do think that nervous system work is the foundation that most people should start with. And for me and for many of the people I worked with, it's really that missing piece that without it, all the other stuff they're doing for their mental health, spiritual health, business health, or any other area doesn't get fully activated until they really understand and activate the power of the nervous system.
I love asking people the question of like, how did you get started? Because we're going to talk about how to regulate your nervous system today, but I want you to understand that most people don't, like, we're not in a society that promotes starting with a regulated nervous system.
Yeah.
We're in a society that pretty much does the opposite, especially with the way like technology is advancing, that we are getting hit from all angles. So I don't love hearing that it was a chaotic start, but I want everyone listening to hear that it does not matter where you're starting when it comes to nervous system regulation, that despite that you're going to learn something today that's going to help you through that. Now, if we're like, how is somebody going to recognize that they have a dysregulated nervous system?
Yeah, chaos. Chaos is going to be all around them, and they're going to feel chaos internally, and their life is going to have a lot of chaos. Their relationships are typically going to be chaotic. Their business is going to feel chaotic. Their, relationships with their kids and managing their kids, raising their kids is going to feel chaotic. Everything is going to feel chaotic. And nobody's ever asked me that specific question quite like that. So I've never actually answered it like that. But intuitively, that is the first thing, if I really had to simplify it, is chaotic. But chaotic, to expand on that word, is exhausted, overwhelmed. Again, chaotic in your mind. You don't think well. You don't trust yourself. You don't feel like you wake up and you're confident in your choices. You ruminate a lot. You doubt, and question everything. You're not organized. It's all of those things that we could classify as neurodivergence or, hot mess express, which is kind of pop culture's way of romanticizing chaos. There's all of these different things. And yes, it might be because you're neurodivergent, or it could be because you're a mom and life is busy. But most of the time, it's really a nervous system that isn't trained to handle the stress and the ebbs and flows of life efficiently. And the simplest way to kind of expand on that is if you think of the things you need to do in your daily life, like lift your baby, like maybe move something around your house, we understand you have to have a basic level of physical ability to do that, right? It's the more fit you are, the easier those things are going to be. Your nervous system is the same way. And when you don't have that core level of nervous system capacity and resilience, everything feels really hard. Everything feels overstimulating, overwhelming, chaotic. Again, it's just like you feel like you can't handle anything. And you basically, at the end of the day, are checked out and doom scrolling, completely disassociated, and you're engaging in a lot of negative behaviors that are running counter to your goals. So, again, if we wanted to put one word, it would be chaotic, but there's all those other little words that kind of go under that umbrella as well.
So for somebody who's listening and neurodivergent, and I hate that the societal rhetoric is that this is the way I am. I'm really like not doing well with that lately of people just kind of coming to me and saying, I am in chaos, but I'm neurodivergent. This is the way I am. Is there a way for people who are experiencing neurodivergence or identify as somebody who is neurodivergent to still regulate and calm their nervous system to a place where it might appear more normal or standard?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm in agreement with you there that the pendulum always swings to all of these extremes. And we had, kind of a lifetime in society where neurodivergence wasn't really recognized. And then it like only in extreme cases of like autism or really dysfunctional kind of representations of that. And then pop culture started understanding, well, this is a spectrum and there's all these other subtypes. And just like people do with their horoscopes, they are attaching to these identities and these labels. I mean, I've seen people sometimes when I click on their profile and it just has all of these diagnoses or labels or titles. And as a first step, it's helpful in understanding yourself and understanding kind of why you might struggle with certain things or why you do certain things. But that's about as far as it goes. And people get so hyper fixated on the diagnosis or the representation that they throw away all personal responsibility for how to manage that in the best way. That's just a tough truth. I'm going to probably upset a lot of people with that because people get very attached to that. No, I am this way because of this, and they hold very tightly to it. But as someone who's actually clinically neurodivergent myself, you don't see me talk about it much because I find it very disempowering to attach my identity to that. I'm conscious of things that I need to do as a neurodivergent individual, someone who has sensitivities to sensory input and things like that. But I manage my life pretty much the same way that I did 15 years ago before I even knew what neurodivergent was. I just maybe do it even more so because I recognize because I have these susceptibilities to overstimulation, dysregulation, rejection sensitivity, like all of these things. That means that I need to take extra care in discipline and boundaries and sticking to my routine and limiting screen time and being aware of dopamine inducing behaviors. It just means that I actually take it more seriously because I know the scale that I can slide to very quickly if I let my wellness routine kind of go by the wayside. And so I think there's a huge lack there of people taking and wanting to take personal responsibility. I think that's a societal issue as a whole. We kind of like to point fingers, name, blame, and then just excuse ourselves. But if we actually step into the driver's seat and say, yes, I have this thing, this dynamic, this genetic susceptibility, but also it's perpetuated by environment, which those things always go together, then I can sit in the driver's seat and I can actually decide that I'm not going to doom scroll for 6 hours at the end of the day. I'm going to go for a walk and I'm not going to grab my phone first thing in the morning. That's going to, fry my brain with dopamine and then say, oh, I can't focus all day. So there really has to be a bridge of radical responsibility and discipline that I think needs to come back into the equation. If anyone is experiencing neurodivergence, I guess, again, you have two camps, one that says it's not a thing at all, which is not helpful and not true. And then the other one that's just like, this is my identity. There's nothing I can do. And they willingly engage in behaviors that make it 1,000 times worse and just say, well, this is how I am. So yeah, I could write a whole book on that, and technically I am, but that's definitely something that I would like to see the conversation expand around.
I love your response to that because I do think it is a measure of extremes and a measure of labels and whether it empowers you or disempowers you. If you have a label on your life or a label on your behavior or the way you are, and it creates like, oh wait, okay, so I can use this to understand why I do this and then do something different. Like those are two different frames we can function from. But
Yeah.
I love the way you explain that, because I think that really what we're asking, and what Holly is pointing out is the way you're thinking about your nervous system or your neurodivergence or your ADD or whatever, is it disempowering you, or are you using that as information to find better ways uh, to be successful in your life? I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So you were just talking about technology, right? And talking about dopamine hits early in the morning for somebody who is needing to, in that chaos, needing to regulate their nervous system. When it comes to technology, what are your go-to rules?
Don't touch it for at least the first 2 hours in the morning. I mean, touch it. The only time I touch my phone in the morning is one, to turn my alarm off. And on certain days, I will start listening to a podcast or an audiobook. Those are typically the days I'm going on longer walks, but even that is actually dopamine inducing. So the first 2 hours of your day is like, well, the first 30 minutes even is literally setting the stage neurochemically for the rest of your day. And when you roll over, you hit the snooze button, you grab your phone, and before you can hardly even open your eyes, you've got that blue light radiating from your screen, which is artificial light. It kind of stresses the body out. And then it's dopamine, it's emails, it's notifications, it's beeps. Well, you just set yourself up for failure for the rest of the day because you just spiked your dopamine, spiked your cortisol. You worked so counter to having a good day. Like, I wish I could just adequately really describe this without having to go into a 20-hour lecture on neurochemistry. But just trust me when I say that first 30 minutes to 2 hours of your day, if you can make different choices and stack things in a different way, because oftentimes people go to, again, extremes and think, if I'm saying don't touch your phone in the first 2 hours, that means I mean never get on social media. No, but social media and scrolling should be kind of midday afternoon or towards the evening, not late at night right before bed, and not first thing, because again, you have all of these peak areas where certain things should be happening. And first thing in the morning, when your circadian rhythms are in this certain zone, you've got natural cortisol rising. When you push it unnaturally high, everything after that, and by the way, we also do this with what do we all do? A huge cup of coffee and typically sugar in the morning. So in the first 60 minutes of our day, we just took our neurochemistry about as high as it can go. And guess what? It's all downhill from there. Yes, we have post caffeine crashes, in the afternoon, but it's not just post caffeine. It's post dopamine. It's post cortisol. It's all of these things that you shot up so unnaturally high. Doom, 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 doom. And this is why people will also go the whole day without smoking, or maybe they did eat healthy. But by the end of the day, they're so depleted and all the cravings kick in. And that's when people are always like, I ate the whole bag of cookies, or I went to the drive through. Again, it goes counter to all the goals that they have for themselves because of the way they started their day. So if you can just not touch your phone, or only use your phone for things like a meditation app, or something positive for the first couple hours, and put in healthier habits there, your mind will be blown with how different your day goes, how your energy changes, your mood changes, and how your health transforms. So that would be like the number one. If somebody could do one thing, it would change everything for them, truly, from a nervous system standpoint, but then much, much deeper into brain health, physical health, mental health, all of that.
So in the morning, we know not to touch our phones. What should we be doing instead? What are some like things that will help our nervous system throughout the day?
Yeah. My favorite is, I mean, honestly, if you can get up and just do any type of movement, even for 10 minutes, that's going to be such a good start to your day. And the key for this is, everybody knows movement is good, right? Nobody's going to argue with that. Exercise is good for us. But back to the extremes, what a lot of people will do is they are maybe doing really intense workouts first thing in the morning, which, okay, cool. If you're going to do intense exercise in the morning is the best time, because that puts you on a positive natural curve up and then down. But any type of movement is going to work on something called your baseline dopamine. everyone is starting to understand dopamine. Again, it's kind of one of those trending things like nervous system regulation, but they understand it in a very simplified, oversimplified way, which is anything that feels good gives me dopamine and I should probably limit that. But what really matters is your baseline dopamine. And your baseline dopamine is a lot more complex and it's a much bigger player for driving all of your positive or negative behaviors. One of the best things that helps raise your baseline dopamine so you don't have those cravings, you're not overstimulated, you're not having that depressive post dopamine drop, is raising your baseline dopamine. And the best way to do that is actually moving your body first thing in the morning. It's going to do a million other things. It's going to help with lymphatic drainage, like all of these other positive benefits. But from my perspective, one of the most powerful things is the way that it impacts and helps change that baseline dopamine. So you have a high natural curve that very gently comes down over time, over the day. But then you wake up and you don't need that stimulating hit from caffeine and the stressful emails and the social media to get you out of bed and going. And that is actually the addictive loop that most people are stuck in. We like to look at addictions as I drink too much, I'm out of control with some type of behavior. We all know like drugs and alcohol as addictions, but we don't like to talk about the fact that 99% of people with a smartphone are actually neurochemically addicted to that stimulation. And that's why they feel so flat and depressed as the day goes on. So move in the morning, 10 minutes, go for a walk, do light yoga, just intuitively move your body in any kind of way. I mean, you can do this without a screen. Again, and whatever you want to do, you could do 10 jumping jacks, 10 air squats, 10-minute walk, but move your body first thing and it will create a positive cascade that's going to set your day up for success. So if you swap out grabbing your phone for the first 30 minutes and can put in some movement, another simple one is just splashing a little bit of cold water on your face first thing. Gets you a little bit of sensory input. That cold water kind of gently wakes you up, but in a positive way. Some people like to do full-on cold shower. That one's a little bit more tricky if you're chronically stressed or you're in like a very overstimulated state, but water on the face is gentle enough for anybody. It's a very gentle stimulus, but also helps kind of create that positive dopamine cascade. So those are two really easy ones. And then of course, meditation, but meditation is also tricky because for again, 80-90% of the people I work with, neurodivergent, stress, trauma, overstimulated, hard charging entrepreneurs, meditation is the last thing that's going to work for them when they're in that state. So yeah, again, we all know meditation is this great concept, but it's going to be very hard to do when you're used to waking up and getting that stress cocktail first thing in the morning. You're not going to be able to swap that out easily. Whereas movement overrides that and can get you in a space to be able to meditate. So 10-minute walk and then 5 minutes of meditation, that's going to work a lot better than trying to wake up first thing and like kumbaya your way into a positive day.
I love what you just talked about in terms of like the simplicity of things that you can do to start your day just to nurture your nervous system and get out of that chaos mode. Because I think that when people think about changing their lives, there are all of these different messages that are getting sent to them of like, oh, you should do a meditation or oh, you need to do a cold plunge. And it's hard for somebody who is new to like even looking at how do I change my life, who's in that chaos to make decisions on what that best next thing will be. And I've had so many people who are like, oh, meditation doesn't work for me. And I'm like, some personalities, I don't think meditation is for.
Yeah.
I think everyone probably eventually could train their brain, but I had a client with pretty severe OCD and her meditation was while she was cleaning, just being so present in that moment and just kind of getting into details and just be existing in that moment. So you can actually manipulate the idea of meditation to suit you. A lot of people meditate while they run or while they walk. And so I love the simplicity of which we can incorporate this into our lives. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on cold plunges? Because I feel like that would be such an unhealthy shock to my system. Anytime I've tried, like, I'm like, I feel panicked, not, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like it's not healthy for my particular nervous system. And I'm curious your thoughts.
I definitely have a lot of thoughts on that. I want to circle back to one thing that you just said about the simplicity and the meditation. I absolutely generally suggest people actually do a walking meditation. I'm a huge, like a die-hard fan of walking. I have this whole walking challenge. I mean, I remember when I was a strength athlete in all of my extremes and, craziness for many years, like walking was something that 90-year-old women who could barely move did. And the more I dove into the research, the more I went through my own health journey, walking just, I became so obsessed with it. And when we think of meditation, we're trying to control our physiology with our mind, which is like 1% of the equation. When we're walking, we put our body in the most natural, like prime state to control our mind. So it's body first is kind of my whole world of somatics. It's called bottom up healing instead of like top down. And so that for many, many people is the key. And so I love that you recommend that. And just doing anything with your mind while you're moving is a really, really great bet. And then the whole extreme things, which segues into the cold plunge. Get me started on the whole influencer culture and that whole world, which this fits right into. Think of this. Our nervous system is wired to take in information about our survival. Are we at risk for death? Now, most of us on a daily basis do not encounter anything that is truly a threat to our survival. But our brilliant, advanced, highly intelligent nervous system is also kind of silly because it doesn't differentiate somebody cutting you off in traffic to a saber-toothed tiger chasing you. It doesn't have the capability still to kind of differentiate. Both of those go into the brain and nervous system as threat to your survival. You should be really stressed, mobilize adrenaline, cortisol, and get the hell out of here, right? Well, what would happen thousands of years ago if you were walking along and suddenly you were in ice cold water? Would that be a threat to your survival?
Yeah.
Yes. That would probably be a really terrible thing that would happen if you were walking across ice and you fell into ice cold water, right? So it's not that it doesn't have its place. It's not that it doesn't have a lot of benefits. It's that when we are completely overloaded and our nervous systems are getting these threat signals, danger signals, you're going to die signals from the second we wake up and grab our phones to the minute we go to bed, then we don't generally need another big saber-toothed tiger in the room theoretically coming at us. And that goes for anything that most of the wellness influencer world is telling you is good for your nervous system. They don't understand the deeper physiology, the true capacity of the nervous system to handle that. They don't understand complex and chronic illnesses and all of these different things that happen with trauma. They're just like, oh yeah, go pop in a 30-degree, tub of water and sit there for 3 minutes. And don't worry, it's all a mind over matter thing. It's just be like Wim Hof. And it's asinine. It's so backwards. It's so oversimplified. It's so extreme. And it works for a very small percentage of the population who is typically very young, has no major chronic health issues, doesn't have a lot of trauma, doesn't have a lot of dysregulation. It's, not the older people that have declining hormones. It's not the sensitive individuals. It's not all these other people. And that's the stuff that you don't hear talked about on social media is you only see the people who do it and they've done it for 962,000 days straight and they have the greatest life. But you don't hear about all the people who did it and went into a shock trauma state or had a really negative, response from it. And so that's one of the things that I hate about social media is we often just see the people that something's working really well for because they become evangelical about it. They teach it, they preach it, they live it, they make their career. There's people that literally just all they do as content is film doing an ice bath every day. They make money off of that. Bob over here, who has a corporate job and 3 kids and is going through a divorce and who hasn't slept in 10 years, doesn't need to follow that model of health. So, yeah, I get a lot feisty about this because, again, the metric for, oh, this is good for your nervous system, I should do ice baths, is so off base for the normal person. And I always describe health, whether it's mental health, physical health, nervous system health, as think of having a house, right? And you've got this big, beautiful house, lots of bedrooms, big yard. The house is on fire. And you're out in the yard worrying about, like, do you want hydrangeas or tulips in your yard? You're worried about this thing that really doesn't matter at all when the entire house is on fire, right? That's what most of the wellness trends that people are chasing are. It's the tulips or hydrangeas. Let me focus on this one little thing while I ignore the fact that the entire house is on fire. So, cold plunges, I've done them. I use cold therapy very strategically in my protocol now. But when I was very, very chronically sick, I when I, before I kind of knew better, was subject to a lot of these communities that were like, you just need to ice bath harder. You just need to this harder. And for many years, I tried to heal from, by the way, my crippling chronic illness that was from a completely broken nervous system by doing the same things that got me sick in the first place, which was overdoing, over pushing, trying to control and force my body to do something. And my body was like, F you. No, we've done this for your whole life. You've starved me. You've overtrained me. You've worked a million hours. We're not giving you any more to work with until you start listening to us. And so I think until we start understanding how to truly tune in and recognize what our body needs, the last thing in the world we should be doing is trying to plunge into a body of cold water and think that that is going to fix all of our problems. So that was a very long answer to your question, but there's a lot there, so I had to kind of cover it all.
No, I think that's helpful. And what I'm hearing in like the common theme is like really in order to regulate your nervous system, don't if you're doing something that's extreme, fucking stop. Like I mean, that's the big message, right? Is that
Yeah.
we can live in the moment. And in the moment, we can do things that nurture our nervous system. And I know you and I have had this conversation, but I'm going to remind you that not everybody on Instagram and TikTok and who's producing content has extensive knowledge of mental health or a nervous system. They may have gone through something, felt better themselves, and then are passing off protocols that are their personal experience as mental health or nervous system advice. And I would just strongly encourage people to like use your discernment with that. Just because somebody has 150,000 followers and they're promoting this stuff does not mean it's the right stuff for you. What did you feel like most people misunderstand about their nervous system?
That it's about being calm, that nervous system regulation is about being calm all the time. Um, Going back to my analogy that I gave earlier, it's not about being calm, it's about having capacity to handle things. And there's so many elements to that. It's the capacity to handle some toxins, because that's a whole world that's very extreme and fear-based. It's the capacity to handle rejection in business and failures, because if you're a business owner, price of entry, it's going to happen. It's about capacity to handle things. And especially if you are a high level human, which I put that in quotations because we're all kind of high level humans, the fact that we exist and function. But people understand that that typically means like high performer, like an entrepreneur, an athlete, someone really kind of going above and beyond. If we strive to achieve big things in our lives, write a book, build a company, like create a huge charity, we can't do that with this tiny little capacity where every little thing makes us crumble and fall apart. You can't do that in business because things slip through the cracks and you won't have good leadership. You can't do that in relationships because you'll take everything personally and you'll overreact all the time from your past experience. You can't do that in health because every little thing is toxic or dangerous or harmful. So we have to be able to find this kind of middle road, um, of recognizing nervous system regulation is about capacity, which is about strength, which is about having this high window of tolerance of life is going to be stressful, it's going to be chaotic, it's going to be busy, it's going to feel personal, we're going to lose things, we're going to grieve, all of that. But what it truly is no matter what's going on around me, I am anchored and I am okay. Not I'm happy, I'm blissful, I'm divine abundance goddess. Again, there's all of this stuff that kind of just bypasses this human element, which I also think is harmful. It's I'm good, I can handle this, I'm capable, and having that ability to make the right decisions from those places of chaos or stress or overwhelm. Because when you're not regulated and you have all that stress and chaos, that's when you do your worst thinking. You make the worst choices, you quit on things, you bail on things, you just do things that aren't productive for your life and your goals. So I think it's just this idea that it's about, sitting on a mountain or meditating or being calm all the time or super stoic. Not necessarily. It's just about I'm okay, I'm not falling apart because my nervous system is really well equipped to handle this. And the higher your goals, the better your nervous system needs to be to handle that. It's like you need a four-wheel drive if you're going to go off-roading. You need certain things to be able to handle that. So I think that's just the biggest misconception is the lack of understanding of capacity building and then the oversimplification of what helps your nervous system get there, which again, like cold plunges or meditation, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
I always like to compare it to having a glass and having it be full to the brim with water, and then any little tiny thing that you pour on top, it's going to overflow. It's going to explode. So the more
Yeah.
space you create in the cup, the more room you have to pour those little inconveniences, like somebody cutting you off in traffic or your child forgetting something at school that you've now got to bring. So I love the way you're talking about this, because I feel like that, again, like the social media perspective on nervous system regulation and mental health in general is like this idea of perfection, right? Is that everything is good and it feels good and we're all doing great and we all have really big beliefs in ourselves. And so breaking it down into those more manageable pieces, that it doesn't have to be you being calm all the time, it's you handling your shit better. That.
Yeah, that's a good point too, just with, the social media kind of thinking not only everything should be calm if you're regulated, but frankly, we have some seriously distorted and clinically inaccurate perceptions of what happiness looks like. The research and the data that's out there state and kind of back up that we're literally happy about 33% of the time. And, because we're inundated with everybody's happiest moments and we follow thousands and thousands of people, we get this false warped reality that we should be happy all the time, that we should have our, flattest stomach day, on our best vacation day, on our best income day, on the day we love our spouse the most, like all of these things, because we're getting those messages all the time. So our perception, our metric for what success looks like, or health looks like, or wellness looks like, is from millions of little fragments of other people's best day. And then that's what we're comparing to. So I think overall, not only the nervous system piece, but just our idea of what success, happiness, like all of the things look like because of influencer culture. Again, think of you're struggling in your relationship and life is hard and you're disconnected and you're not communicating well. Well, then you follow 20 relationships accounts and that's all they do is talk about the perfect things in their relationships and pictures of them hugging. Suddenly you get more and more unhappy with your real life relationship because you're following these people who are only sharing the best and their entire identity is happiness in relationships. That goes for any area of health, business, any area of life. And so I think one of the healthiest things people can do is really disconnect from social media sometimes and start comparing themselves to reality, like have a more realistic metric of what they're comparing themselves to. So they don't think they need to be calm all the time, happy all the time, every day successful, all of that. It seriously harms mental health for us to have that expectation. And it's very subconscious. We're not consciously thinking, we all know this is the highlight reel. But what we don't realize is how that's shaping our internal metric on a subconscious level.
I actually had a conversation with a client yesterday, I think, and I was saying that, a lot of people talk about the natural frequency, like the innate frequency being bliss. And I was like, I just have never believed that. I think neutrality is where we shine, and then we can build up from there if we want and have the intention to. But I don't think we're walking around energetically even meant to be pure love and bliss and light. I've just never felt like that was true. And so finding the neutral in your day, finding the centering in your day to get your day going sets you off in that neutral spot that we're talking about, to build on if you want to, or to just be in a space to hold more capacity for the things that are real life, that come up, that show up, that are stressful naturally. Um,
100.
what are some, I know we talked about kind of starting off with like your morning and detaching from your phone and maybe using some movement or cold water. What are three other things that people can do today or this week to regulate their nervous system?
So I always love this question because it gets really simple. One quick thing that will actually tie into this that I wanted to just close with the whole perception of bliss. I love the clinical side of neurochemistry and somatics and all of that. Like I love that side. But another part of my own personal journey and background is very, very much into consciousness and spirituality and like all of these different realms of religion and just like ancient wisdom and Buddhist teachings basically, they don't tell you to seek being happy. And if you listen to a Buddhist monk talk, he won't say, I do all of this to be happy. I do all of this to be at peace. And so there's just this really cool correlation if you look at most of the most ancient text and philosophies that have been around since the beginning of time. They match up to modern neuroscience so perfectly. You're not supposed to be happy all the time. You're just supposed to be at peace, even when things are challenging. So I just thought that was kind of an important thing to share that I think is very cool about, people that are into those things. It correlates so perfectly. As far as the simple things, number one, I always start with is breath. And when we're speaking about all of the ways we're inundated with social media, one of the things we get inundated with this message is everything needs to be super complex and super proprietary and super multidimensional and next level and all of that. And so we tend to dismiss the most simplistic ground level things like how we exhale. No, that couldn't possibly be it because, well, no influencer is going to make $1 million selling you a program telling you to exhale for a few extra counts. But I will share it with you guys for free now because it's one of the most important things you can do. And if you truly commit to this sprinkled throughout your day, it has a massive potential to like dramatically change the way you feel. The first thing is learning to slowly control and elongate your exhale. So basically, our nervous system gets our information from our body and vice versa. It's a feedback loop, right? When somebody cuts you off in traffic and your heart rate goes up, we all know that like shock that we get, we almost trip down the stairs or something. It flashes really quick, right? Well, that instantly makes our already shallow breathing go even faster. We're ready to fight something or to flee, right? The problem is, like I was saying earlier, because we get so many of these stimuluses all day, every day, we generally stay in that heightened state. We breathe 22 to 24,000 times a day. And most of those breaths are dysfunctional, shallow breaths that send SOS, SOS, SOS. It's telling the body you're stressed long after the email or the person almost cut you off. And this is one of the biggest drivers to chronic dysregulation and overstimulation is we never switch on and off. We're at capacity, we're overloaded, and then we just stay there by the way we breathe thousands and thousands of times a day. So a little kind of foundational level for understanding why this is so important. When we can learn to consciously intercept that stress signal with their breath, we actually turn the emergency alert system off. Now, think of if you had a smoke detector going off in your house all day, how annoying that would be. What if you could just go and hit the button and turn it off? That's what you can do with the stress signal with this breath technique I'm going to teach you. And it's so simple. There's, again, millions of different breath techniques, and it can get really advanced. But this is the one I have people start with, which is learning to breathe laterally instead of vertically, which means you're expanding outward. Your diaphragm is actually expanding outward so that you're bringing that breath deeper into the ribs, not the belly. That's going to automatically take it out of your chest and, relax the shoulders. But here's the big key, right? When you inhale laterally into the ribs and then you slowly elongate the exhale for just a second or two longer. And it looks like this. If people are watching the video or have access to that, when somebody cuts you off and you instantly find yourself gripping the steering wheel and you're stressed, you just take one. It doesn't even have to be that deep. It can just kind of be a normal breath, but you just make sure, okay, I'm going to breathe a little deeper here. And then instead of just going exhale, I'm going to just elongate it a second or two longer than you normally would. That's all you have to do. And what this does is the second that breath is elongated, your brain gets a signal that says, there's no bear. There's no threat. Because if a bear was chasing you, you would not be slowing down and slowly exhaling, right? So it is that powerful. You obviously want to do it, 4 or 5 times. You can do it 10 times, but just learning to recognize When that stress button gets activated, when you get triggered, the email comes in, the text comes in, the traffic, whatever it is, when you can catch it and just be like, take a, that lateral breath, make sure you're not breathing way up here in the neck and tense, but lateral exhale, inhale, and then an elongated exhale. You just literally turned that stress response off from being on autopilot loop for the rest of the day. So I have clients when I like this is foundational. Again, I have hundreds of tools and modalities and little things that take seconds a day, so many cool things, but this is always something I teach them. I have them put a little post-it note on their computer so they're consciously getting the reminder throughout the day. They're emailing and they're oh, I need to stop and just take a couple breaths. Put a post-it note on your car dash, set reminders on your phone. You just want to sprinkle it throughout your day so you start learning to do that as a way of breathing or as an hourly check-in. But the best way is to pair it with that trigger response of stress activation, because that's when you're going to go from really stressed to crazy stressed and stay there if you don't learn how to turn it back down. So slow, elongated exhale, do it as much as possible. Don't get fancy with it. That is number one. The other two quick things to kind of build on that is, again, walking. I can't overstate the power of it. It's not just about moving your body or getting your heart rate up. What it does neurologically when you are walking, the way your brain and your eyes actually have to kind of navigate movement in that way, automatically activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is getting you out of that activated sympathetic activation. So a 5-minute walk, that's all it takes. If you can get in the habit of doing that on your lunch break in the morning, you can walk in place. You cannot mess it up. Just do it for a few minutes. Crazy, crazy, crazy beneficial. And again, the compounded interest that you'll get over time by just committing to, I'm going to exhale slower 20 times a day throughout the day and walk 5 minutes. Well, that doesn't sound very dynamic, but when you do that consistently, because it's so easy over just even 30 days, it will actually change your neurophysiology, the way your brain and your body is responding to stress. The third thing, I would say getting into some type of somatic practice. There's a million of them. There's somatic release, there's Qigong, there's EFT, there's so many different techniques, but something that connects you more intentionally with your body. And that could also be as simple as just stretching. Turn your phone off, no music, no stimuli, and for 5 minutes at night, just connect with your body, like maybe even like touch your body, kind of just like literally connect with your body and stretch, notice what you feel, because that starts building those internal senses that say, I'm not going to escape my body, I'm going to tune in because it's safe to do so. And if you do that as a third step from your breath, your walk, you'll be able to tap in much deeper. So if you try to do that first thing, again, in chaos land, you're just going to feel more chaos. But if you do that at the end of the day, after you've done the other two practices, that is a really good way to like tie up the day with a nice, healthy little bow and just be like, I gave myself 60 seconds of just tuning in, connecting, self-massaging, stretching, breathing, expressing gratitude, however you want to add, extra little bells and whistles on it. But those are three really simple things that collectively take less than 10, 15 minutes a day that anybody can do, no equipment, like you don't need anything. And if you just stay consistent with those and build those into your life, I promise you, they will change your life.
Oh, I just love the simplicity of it because I know people who are in chaos who started this podcast are going to hear those and be like, okay, I can do that. And
Yeah,
I think that's like the point, right? Is to be able to hear that and be like, oh, wait, I can do that. I can breathe a little bit longer. I can move my body. Maybe after lunch, just do it through. I actually bought a walking pad just so that I could walk for a little bit after lunch because I get a good walk in the morning. But I was like, oh, it would be really nice to break up my day without having to completely disconnect from my workflow. So finding ways to incorporate these things and being intentional. I am not above a reminder on my phone. I think that your phone alarms and just having it say, hey, breathe a little bit for, just having that practice of we're getting messages all day long. We might as well be getting ones that are helpful
right.
to our nervous system, right? We're already getting
Exactly.
So I've loved this conversation. You were an absolute wealth of knowledge, and I know that everybody is going to want to work with you because they want to regulate their nervous system. How can they get on your books or work with you?
Yeah, so best place to find me and connect with all of my resources is Instagram. It's Brain Body Speak. Brainbodyspeak.com has a much deeper dive into, the modalities that I do, kind of my process, my method, and the different sequences that I take people through. But if you want to connect and reach out, like send me a message. I'm very engaged on, social media, and I'm happy to answer any questions and support you however I can. I will say I also have, like many people, freebies. Like I'm very, very passionate about accessibility for people. I love doing stuff like this and teaching people quick little tricks, but I also have freebies, like things to plug in and use on your own if you're not ready for that one-to-one step. So take advantage of those and just stay consistent. Stay consistent with the simple things and make nervous system your priority. And again, it'll activate everything else in your life in such a beautiful way. And if I can support, I'm here.
And it's all adding up. Like all of these things that you are intentionally choosing for yourself, like it's all adding up. You don't have to be a professional at it. You don't have to devote your entire day to it, but all these little things that you're choosing for yourself are eventually going to snowball in a positive direction. I will drop all of those links into our show notes so you can find them right there. But thank you so much for joining me today. I think this was a really powerful conversation.
Thank you. You asked such perfect questions that I think are going to be so relevant, and hopefully some people had some good light bulb moments and all of this was useful. So thank you.